Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Orden Ogan, Final Days, out March 12 on AFM Records. This album has 10 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a German power metal band and they're delivering you a sci-fi concept record. That's it, sci-fi concept record. Now, I don't want to tell you too much about the story because I don't want to take anything away from the experience of listening to the album and going through it, digesting it on your own. But as you can probably tell by the title of the record, this is about the final days of mankind on this planet and perhaps a hope or looking for hope outside in space, going somewhere else in order for mankind to be able to continue to exist. Now, as far as the structure of this record is concerned, this is an album that built this structure surrounding the concept that it has. The two are tied in together. You can't really have one without the other. When you look at the overall big picture of the album is designed, is put together almost like a movie. It has the ups and downs, the necessarily ebbs and flows. It has a climatic moment, and then it has the end scene. So everything about this record, the way it's built, the way it's constructed, on the individual song basis and as far as the big picture of the whole record goes, it's all about being a cinematic approach to the concept that it holds. So everything is coming together in order to give you this big picture, this big sound, this big experience. And speaking of sound, the album definitely gravitates around that sci-fi theme, even in its sound. I felt like this is a record that really has big presence, cinematic approach, not just from a structural perspective, but also definitely from the way it sounds, the way it feels, and the way it comes across. So it's an album that pushes the envelope, it pushes the boundaries, it feels like it was created in order to make the experience of the lyrics, the experience of the storytelling, the experience of the concept come to life at every turn. Like if you were there, you were experiencing it for yourself. That is how the soundscape of this album is put together. Now, deeper within that soundscape, there's definitely a few elements that become the motors of the existence of the overall atmosphere and how this record comes across. I don't think you can talk about this album without talking about the keyboards and the role that they play in the atmosphere and creating this big cinematic sound. Extremely important from the first song to the last song. I don't think you're gonna get that sci-fi vibe if they're not there and they're not used in the way that they are throughout this record, with a very specific tone, with a very specific delivery, with a very specific intent on every single track. I like this idea of adding the keyboards in a very specific way that really reminds you of space, that has this out-of-body existence or experience, if you will, because it allows the record to start to feel more than just a record. It starts to have meat and bones. It starts to have layers and depth of sound and depth of experience. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of the keyboards on this record is that sometimes they go a little bit too far in the experience. They go a little bit too far in order to paint that picture, and you start to feel like they're perhaps dictating a little bit of how the overall sound is going to be on any given specific track. So I understand why they used it and why they were used in the way that they were, because like I said, you have this concept, you have this idea, you have this sci-fi motif, and in order to bring it to life, what better sound but to the keyboards, and what better way to create the cinematic atmosphere but to use them throughout the whole record. I just felt that on some tracks they went a little bit overboard, becoming a little bit robotic, and while helping telling the story, they also are taking a little bit away of the experience of the songs themselves. Now, the next element is the guitars. I really love how the guitars sound on this record. I like the dynamic approach that they have. I love the solos, the melodies, the riffs. Everything is in the right place with the right sound, with the right amount of heaviness or melody depending on what the track calls for. So very dynamic approach, not a one size fits all from the first song to the last song, but at the same time with some boundaries. They're not completely free reigning. They're not just like going anywhere that they want to go. There's definitely some boundaries in terms of where they can go or how far they can reach, but within those boundaries you're pretty much going to get everything out of them, all the way from one side to the other, really allowing them to be almost a life form within the record itself, and allowing the album to have some direction, to have some momentum, some continuity from track to track. Last but not least, as far as the elements of the sound that really drive this record, I have to mention the drums. Very consistent from the first song all the way to the last song, always providing a lot of oomph, providing a lot of heaviness, providing a lot of power, providing a solid bass that allows all the elements to come through. I don't think the keyboards could be as outer space as they are, like completely out of the box in some of the tracks as they are, if the drums were not providing the baseline, the foundation for the tracks themselves, and then obviously for the overall record. So I think the drums on this album perhaps will go a little bit, they'll be perhaps pushed to the side a little bit, because there's so many other elements coming at you. There's so many other moving pieces that make this album super big in sound and experience, and the drums may be relegated to a secondary position. But in my opinion, I think they play a huge role, a very important role, that allows the keyboards and the guitars to be as dynamic as they are, that allows them to really guide you as far as the concept of the album and the experience that the band wants you to have with this record, but at the same time keeping everything together, keeping everything concise. The last element for me that really is an important one, not just from a sound experience, but the overall experience of the record, is definitely the vocals. Very consistent from the first track all the way to the last track. I love the vocal tone, I love the delivery, I love the choirs, I love the backing vocals. There's only one element in the vocals that I wasn't a huge fan of, and that was bringing a little bit of an electronic sound to the vocals. Once again, I understand the idea behind it. You want to match the story that you're telling on any specific track. You want to bring the lyrics to life. You want to bring the concept to life. You want people to be able to visualize what you're singing about. So from that perspective, it makes sense to do it. But overall, I felt that it took a little bit of an impact. It took a little bit of away from the overall quality that the vocals have, and it became a little bit of a gimmick. And I'm not a huge fan of that on an album like this. Once again, I understand the direction, I understand the need, or at least feeling the need to do it, but I want the vocals to be what they are. The vocals are definitely always one of the strong points on any Orden Ogan record. The consistency, the tone, the delivery, the melody that they bring, the power, the strength. So I don't want anything touching that sense, touching that part of the DNA of the band. I want that to be absolutely intact. I want that to be on its own and to be one of the driving forces without any exterior help. In some tracks it was there, and I felt like it took a little bit of the power, of the strength, and the beauty that the melody, that the vocals have throughout the record. The good news is that it's not there on every single song, so that is definitely a plus, at least from my perspective. But the songs that it was there, I felt like it hurt the overall sound and the overall delivery that the vocal track could have had on those specific tracks. Now, overall, this is a very strong album. This is a great record. There are a few things, like I said, that in my opinion, while helping the concept of the record, it hurt the delivery of the music. So it's kind of hard to balance those two worlds. You want to have an album that has a story, and a story that comes to life, that becomes real with every single note, with every single lyric, but at the same time you're still creating a musical record. It's still music, it's still metal, it's still sound, and you have to find a balance. I felt that throughout the record, most of the times that balance was there. There were a few times that it wasn't, and it hurt the overall impact that those songs could have had, at least from a musical perspective. Now, one thing I will say about this album is that it gets better as it progresses, and that's not something that it's true about every single record. But from my perspective, from my own point of view, as I'm listening to this album, as I'm getting deeper into the story, as I'm getting deeper into the record, I felt the album was becoming bigger, better, the sound was better defined, more cohesive. They start to understand the momentums of the tracks better, where they could do certain things and get away with it in order to help the concept but not hurt the songs themselves. So this is an album that progresses, that gets bigger and better as it moves along, and I would say that the final tracks of the album are perhaps the best songs that the album has to offer. It really shows you how concise and how compact the quality of the album is, that it allows itself to gain momentum, to gain strength, to gain quality as it moves, as it progresses across all 10 songs. Now, as far as favorite tracks goes, I really like Let the Fire Rain. This song is absolutely magnificent. It has a little bit of an older school style sound as far as Orden Ogan is concerned. It doesn't have that much of that sci-fi feel in terms of how it comes across, in terms of how the song is constructed. So it feels more like a traditional Orden Ogan track, at least to me. I love that it moves a little bit slowly. It explodes, specifically in the verses, then explodes in the chorus. Very hooky, very catchy. That is something that is true throughout this record. You're gonna get super hooky and catchy songs at every single turn. This one is just another one of those. The choirs really help the volume. It really help the chorus become bigger, stronger, more melodic, if you will, making a bigger impact, really creating a huge pivot from how the verses come across and then how the chorus is all the way up here, being a lot stronger, a lot more bombastic. There is a little bridge on this track that has this choir humming that feels very Iron Maiden-esque, if you will. But it's so beautiful. It adds so much to the overall song. It gives a different nature, it gives a different atmosphere, it gives a different flair to how the song is constructed and how the song is delivered, allowing the track to become a lot bigger and a lot better. I love that momentum. I love that bridge on this song. Next, Black Hole, heavier sounding track. The drums are really powerful in this song, the guitars as well, both elements really pushing this track forward, really giving it momentum and direction and intent and purpose at the same time. Staying very consistent as far as that heaviness is concerned throughout the verses and chorus. You don't really feel a dip or a decrease in heaviness, if you will, regardless of in which part of the song you're navigating through. It stays very tight together all the way, and it doesn't allow itself to lose any momentum whatsoever. The chorus is perhaps a little bit more melodic, but that melody never takes anything away from the heaviness that the song has all the way throughout, allowing it, like I said before, to be a very consistent element from the beginning all the way to the end. I love how it sounds, I love how it feels. There's a couple of solos that really come in and break the dynamic of the track, reset the song, if you will, but I feel like they were very important for a song like this, a song that has a lot of heaviness, that has a lot of power, that starts to feel perhaps a little bit repetitive. You hit it with the solos, you breaks the routine, it breaks everything that was happening up until that point, loses a little bit of the heaviness, becoming a little bit brighter, becoming a little bit bigger sound, so it resets your senses before you go back to the original forma and closing off the track on a very strong note. Last but not least, Hollow, another heavy track with great tempo, great purpose, great sound, very heavy, relentless at times. This track has a very interesting approach because it feels like the climax of the story is built into this song. Everything that happened in this record up to this track is building up to it, and this track then finally delivers. Is the explosion of energy, is the explosion of power, is the explosion of all the elements that we saw throughout the record coming together in one single track. You get heaviness, you get power, you get a little bit of a poppy approach as far as the chorus is concerned, becoming very hooky, very catchy, something that's true throughout the whole record but becomes a little bit more noticeable with this track, and you just have everything coexisting in the same track and working so well together in order to make Hollow one of the stronger songs on this album. This is it. This is Orden Ogan with Final Days, out March 12 on AFM Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.